All right, so this is a second supplemental addendum video to the other video I made about the KTM 65. I'm going to link that other video in here. I will also link a video of another gentleman on YouTube which helped me quite a lot with his experience with 65s. Very helpful. I'm going in this video to disagree with that gentleman's carburetor tuning. Used an airplane term there, carburetor tuning experiences. So let me talk about that. So every time when you start tuning your carburetor, idea is, get it running with a proper mixture, not too lean, not too rich. I'm not going to talk about circuits and adjustments. I will assume you know all of that. If you've never heard about carburetor tuning on two-strokes, stop. Go watch basic two-stroke carb tuning videos so that you understand what is the main jet, needle, idle jet, idle circuit. I'll link those videos in here too, by the way. There's a few really good ones that help me. But after you understand that, this is my 65 experience that I would have appreciated if I found on YouTube, and so I decided to put it up on YouTube. Anyway, so every time you tune a dirt bikes or two strokes carb, the first thing I tell you is start with the book numbers. So go to the book, see which jetting combination you need to use for your conditions, right? So your elevation and your range of temperatures. Do that, and then determine where you are, and then go from there. So lesson number one that I learned is that is not always true. In this bike, it was set up way too rich. I ditched everything that was in it, installed every tunable piece of the carburetor by the book, and this bike now runs perfect. This bike, completely different experience. So, while the book is a great starting point, it didn't work out for me in my conditions here. And I'll tell you exactly what I did. Second point. You can't, if you've never done this before, or even if you have done this before, at least my impression is you cannot do that in a day. You cannot do this in a week. The way this usually works is you go to the track, you ride the bike, you watch what it does. You make your judgment based on that. You go home, you tweak one piece, you check it at the house real quick, but go back to the track, ride again, see what happens, right? So it took me 4 sit-downs and a month to get this bike where I am actually happy with it now. Okay? That was point number 2. Point number 3. How do you know if you're too lean, too rich? So the videos I linked down here are really good generic stuff. I'll admit, honestly, I didn't do chop tests. I didn't do like spark plug cutting and whatnot. Redneck engineering, okay? But I could tell you this. These bikes are set up to run too rich with the default numbers, right? Or because it's safer, right? If you're rich, you're just not as efficient. You're fouling plugs and you're pooping spooge, black goop out of your exhaust. If you're too lean, you're blowing up your engine. So they're always erring on the rich side. I haven't seen a bike that erred on the lean side. So here's my telltales. You pull the plug. If it's black, you're rich. By the way, if it's like super white and clean, you're lean. Stop. Reevaluate. You can see other videos about that and read a bunch of stuff. If you have black poop, it's black, oily, goopy stuff coming out of the exhaust pipe is not here, but in this one, coming out of your exhaust and like going down there or like dripping out of here, you're way too rich, or you have too much oil. I run book numbers on the oil. If it says 1 to 60, I run 1 to 60. So I don't have a too much oil symptom. So it's always too rich. What I like to see personally is I like to see this aureole of blackness over here. That tells me that I'm running just a hair rich, which means I'm on a safe side, but, not that rich that I'm too rich. And the bikes are running great. The rider is not complaining. So, with the 65, for my conditions, meaning elevation. So the book will always tell you elevation, temperature is going to be a spreadsheet. And then the spreadsheet is going to tell you, you're that high, you are that hot. That's the combination you should run. So for my combination, for my elevation and range of temperatures, what I should be running is 20 idle jet, second position on the needle, and 210 main jet. My conditions are 800 feet, and we'll call it anywhere between 50 and 80 degrees. I am running a setup which, by the book, should be run at my elevation between 100 and 120 degrees, or at an elevation of 2,500 feet within my temperature range. That's how rich the book is. So I went essentially 2 steps leaner from the book. The video and the gentleman that I keep mentioning that I'm disagreeing with him. So here's what he did. He said the bike ran too rich, and I went and I bought a Nihilo jetting kit, which came with 3 jets and a needle. And 3 jets are, I think it's like 210 and 15, 210 and 20, 210 main, 20 idle, which is the book numbers for average elevation, which is too rich in my experience. But the needle, I'll show you the needle. I almost got the needle. Sorry, guys. Okay. Yeah, this is all live. So this is the Nihilo needle. Please focus. The quality of machining on this needle is absolute garbage. It's garbage. Compared to a proper Mikuni, is just night and day. And Mikuni is also anodized or plated in some way. Okay. Also, the shape of the needle is different, which means that Nihilo, for some reason, decided to screw with fuel delivery curve depending on the throttle opening position, and I don't appreciate that. I'm sorry, but I don't think Nihilo spent enough R&D on this engine, or at least the amount of R&D on this engine similar to KTM. And then the gentleman said, well, I put the thing in, and the bike ran better. It's still false plugs. Okay, well, if it's still false plugs, that means it's too rich. My bike doesn't fall plugs. I pulled one out after 10 hours. I mean, it was black-ish, but it wasn't like black as in like you won't be able to start it black, right? It was a little rich, but not fouled, if that makes sense. I will admit, I tried the Nihilo kit, and on my bike, it ran like crap. So for what it's worth, that's my experience with it. So Nihilo kit's sitting in a box. I'm running only OEM jets, only OEM needles, because I can be sure that, yes, they are ridiculously expensive, but the holes in them are drilled right, they're smooth, dimensions are proper, and whatnot. Okay, so that's the jetting. So my jetting setup for KTM 65 2016 with this Mikuni carburetor, and I believe they're still using them till now, even on the current models, are as follows, right? So I have 205 main, I have the needle that the standard needle, 5IPL43. My idle is 15, and my clip position is number 1. So the needle is dropped down to the leanest position. So the leanest position on the needle, 205 main and 15 idling jet. The throttle body itself and the needle jet is by the book. So that's my setup. We're talking 800 feet elevation, and we ride anywhere between, let's call it 50 and 90 Fahrenheit on the thermometer. Now, that's jetting. The other thing, I'm going to talk about a couple more bits. So, if you find that you don't get enough range of adjustment on this idle throttle screw, you are too rich. When I got the bike, it was with standard book jets, and this, when you screwed it all the way in, it wouldn't hold idle. Yeah, it was way too rich, guys. If you find your bike not starting with choke on when it's cold, but starting with a choke off, that means it's too rich, right? You need more fuel when the bike starts. If you have too much fuel, it's not going to start. So that's more fuel than this. If you can start with choke off and cannot start with choke on, you're flooding it. So that's too rich. If when your bike runs, it runs, what you're supposed to do is, if you put the choke down, it's supposed to kill it. Why? Because now that's too much fuel. When it's warm, right? When it's running, you put the choke down, that's flooding it with fuel, it dies. If it doesn't, or if it starts running better, you are too lean, okay? Because this adds fuel. These are just a couple of clues. Okay. The air screw, and this is an air screw. There's two ways of adjusting idle mixture. Air or fuel, right? Air means you're adding air by you're changing the air percentage in the mixture by tweaking it. Fuel screw means you're changing the percentage of fuel in the mixture by tweaking. This is an air screw, which means by opening it, you're adding more air. In other words, by opening it, you're making the bike run more lean. This is the KTM air screw. Where the heck is the spring? So, and if you already have a 65, you're laughing right now because you know what I'm going to tell you. And if you don't have a 65, well, you're about to find out. So your carburetor sits on a bike like this, and there's your beautiful suspension right here. So you cannot adjust this screw on the bike unless you make some very weird, funky special tool for the screw. And it's a known problem. And you want to adjust the screw. I find me adjusting the screw throughout the day based on my observations or the temperature ranges. So aftermarket, right? Nihilo makes this screw. There's two things that are different about this screw. So first of all, is my spring still in? I think it is. Okay. Yeah. And this is a new one. Yeah. So the first thing is, you see how it's sticking out, right? Hang on. Where's that screwdriver? Nihilo fancy screwdriver, come to me. I'll pause you guys while I look for the screwdriver. Okay, found the screwdriver. So the screw sticks out, right? And they give you this bow-ended hex screwdriver that can get a purchase on the screw at like an angle, right? And if you sit on the bike, the suspension collapses enough to open this hole enough to like be able to do this, and then you can tweak it. So that's good. That's good. The disadvantage is this: the amount of turns you get out of the Nihilo screw is a lot less than the amount of turns you get out of the KTM screw, because the geometry on the actual screw is different. Do you see that? It's longer. And actually, the taper on the needle is also different. So you have a lot less of range of adjustment. On this screw, I want to say you get about 4 turns. On this one, you get like 3.5. That's a lot, especially since the default position is 3.5 out. So basically, in the default position, you're already all the way out on this screw. So remember how if you didn't see that video, I talked about the most important special tool you can buy to work on a dirt bike, and I said it's a lathe, and it is a lathe, and here's why. So what I do with these Nihilo screws is I remachine them, and this is, it's not a like super easy job, but here you could see it, right? So this is a Nihilo screw. The one on the top is remachined by me. So I make it a lot shorter. I make it as short as possible so that I can contact the carburetor here with the screw all in, but as short as possible, okay? I take off this, I need a pointer. I take off, come on, focus. Focus! I'm turning into AV over here. It has a taper right here. I take it off. And the other thing I do is I make the business end of this needle look exactly how it looks in the KTM. You see how this taper is a lot more shallow. This is more steep, which means it's a quarter surge adjustment. I make it look like this. Well, and I'm not going extremely ultra super precise, but I'm going close enough, right? And the way I do it is, well, it's a machining problem, not really a dirt bike problem, but basically what I do is I chuck this one in, I pick up the taper, and then I chuck this one in, and I repeat that taper on this. It takes me about an hour to remachine one of these, but then it turns into, something decent. And now, actually this screw works better than the KTM screw, because I get more range of adjustment on this screw, because I custom machined it essentially to fit the carburetor as best I could. And I get my access to it right from the top. So what I did to make sure that I'm contacting the carburetor, so like I'm bottoming out at some point, right? Like when it's all in, this is bottomed out. So why is it bottomed out? Is it bottomed out because it's actually closing, like is the taper contacting the carburetor? That's what you want. Or is it bottoming out because my thread is too short, or the actual, the business part of it is too short, just the thread is, by screwing in, collapse that spring inside and the spring's done. Well, so what I did was I blued the screw with layout blue, and I don't know if there's still any left in there, but I was testing it right. What I wanted to do is I wanted to pull the screw in and then make sure that it's blue on the tip. Yeah, you can see that little faint blue right there, right? So that means that when I was bottomed out, it touched the piece of the carburetor that it's supposed to touch against and picked up some of the blue. And so, yeah, see, I took it off. I'm rubbing it off with my fingers. So that, and it's also very, very, yeah, it's almost gone now. It's very, very, the amount of blue that's left in there is very little. I mean, I did that test like 50 times already. Yeah, so, there you go. That's the high-low screws. The one thing I want to do is I still don't like doing this kind of weird thing at an angle like this, and sit on the bike, collapse the suspension so that I can get to it. So the other thing I'm going to try to do when I put the thing together is I'm going to try to machine what I'm thinking is like a tiny little thumb screwdriver, with like this little chunk of the hex with like a little thumb wheel at the end, so that I can just put it in and just thumb wheel it. We'll see. If that works, I'll add it to the end of this video. And if it doesn't work, I'm not going to add anything. So far, that's all I got on the carburetors for Mikuni carburetors for 65s. So I mentioned that I was going to make that adjustment tool for the, I'm going to take a pointer, for the idle mixture adjustment screw, which is right there. Yeah, I don't think this will work. Every single time I think about something clever, when the carburetor is off, when the carburetor is back on, it smacks me right in the face. So that's that idle mixture adjustment screw. You can see how close it is to the shock. That's my finger over there. Oh, focus, please. There we go. See, that's my finger around the shock right there. So yeah, the way I adjust it is I take this bull-ended screwdriver and I go in from there, and it's like it's at this crazy angle, kind of like that. You see that? So it still works. And then I can sit in the bike, compress the suspension, will move the shock that way a little bit, right? And that'll give me a little better access. Yeah, now I remember why I busted up the screw. But see, even here it kind of works, even the suspension not compressed. So I'll just leave it as is. I'm not going to try to make a tool. See, I was hoping that I would just make a shorter, stubbier version of this, but no. Yeah, and then, you know, over time I'll bust up the hex on this one, and then I'll machine yet another screw for this. All right, so that's the final say on the adjustment tool. Carburetor is back. See, because what he actually broke on it, he broke this. The reason I had the carburetor off is because he broke this. So I had to undo the throttle, and I figured I'd take it off and clean it. Felt like it started running rich again. You know, that's why I took it off, and I also figured I'd make a video about it because I wanted to actually make a video about it for a while. Well, so sorry. There you go, rambling again.